Oh, there we
go. Hello. Okay, so it's 1:50, so I'll get started. I think we're good to go. Looks like we have 28 people coming in here, so that's exciting to see everyone. So my name's Crossan. Welcome to the Leadership Character session. I am a PhD candidate at Western University in the School of Kinesiology. Let me see. Just making sure that everyone can see this screen, but I think it looks good. Okay. So I understand that there's 2 other parallel sessions, so I wanted to be really clear at the beginning of this session, the goal or what you would get out of this session, because I know you want to make sure that you're getting out of the session what you want to with 2 other great sessions going on. So the main purpose of this session is really to introduce you to character and to understand how you can use character to support your ability to excel in whichever pathway you want to go in sport. And then there's some other kind of byproducts that you'll get out of this session as well. And those include examining your character, which will help you understand the decisions that you're making, how you can use character to elevate your performance, how you can use character to elevate your well-being, how you can understand other people's decisions based on understanding their character, identifying group level characters, so why groups are doing the things that they're doing. And then if you are in a leadership position, thinking about how you can recruit, select, or embed a character leadership culture. So those are the main kind of focuses and outcomes of this session. So a little bit about myself. I grew up in London and I did many sports growing up, and I ended up zeroing in on golf and volleyball towards my end junior years. And there's actually a pivotal moment that's very kind of related to this conference, Pathways in Sport, where I actually had a very serious few months where I thought about leaving sport overall. And I remember sitting down with my parents, and the biggest thing that I took away from that conversation is that I was going to be closing more doors by leaving sport than trying to stay in sport for whatever those reasons were back then. But just thinking about when you're making big decisions in life, what may be closing more doors than opening more doors for you? And I'm very, very, very thankful that I stayed in sport at that time. And ultimately, I ended up going on a NCAA Division I scholarship for golf in the States, and ultimately because I thought about pursuing golf at a professional level. And after university, I actually decided that wasn't for me. So I knew that I loved sports, so I decided to stay in sport by staying for an extra year to be an assistant coach for my team. And then after that, still loved sport. So continued to look for pathways that I could stay in sport, although I wasn't that competitive elite athlete anymore, and decided that I wanted to look at researching what makes people perform at their best. So that's where I am now. I'm looking at how you can develop character to enhance athletic performance and embed it into sport organizations. While I've been doing research, I've also gone back to coaching the volleyball teams that I grew up playing with. So that's the Forest City volleyball team in London. So I want to know a little bit more about who's all out there. And I've made quite an interactive kind of session here. So I'd like you all to try and open up another tab, or if you have a phone, you can do this through your phone. And what you do is you go into mentimeter.com. Right here is the website. And you put in this code 6177-1865. So I'm going to go to the next slide. The code's still going to be there. And so I'm going to open up my phone just to make sure I see what you're seeing. And you should, if you look at my screen, come up with a little screen like this. And so my question is, what is your current relationship with sport? I'd really like to know who's out there and what your relationship with sport is right now, because it's really going to help us get more out of this session. Might take a few minutes to get in there. We're going to continue using Mentimeter, so we can kind of just keep that open. Current youth sports athlete, teacher, player, coach. What else? Director of operations, student athlete, player. Oh, this is great. I love this Mentimeter. Okay. Special Olympics coach. So we've got a good mix. Sports Mustang. Awesome. Just taking all of this in. Skills development. Cool. So we've got quite an array here. And then, cool, we still got some coming in. Sport official. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to go to the next one here. And it is now, you might be staying where you are in your sport, but maybe what pathways are you considering towards moving? So we might see some of the similar answers here, but I'd just like to see if we have a little bit of a difference in feedback here. So what pathways are you considering in sport? So it should have prompted you on that same Mentimeter page to go to the next slide. Coach, sport journalist. Oh, cool. Coaching, entrepreneurship, events researching, sport official. So, and you know what's cool about this too is this helps everyone see all the different pathways that there really are in sport. There's just so many different pathways. National level coach, community coach, school coach, professional researching, NCAA, sports broadcaster, admin. Whew, we got a lot here. Scouting, very cool. I like that. Events, school coach. Great. Okay, so now I have a better idea of who's out there. This is very cool. Community coach, moving to PSO or NIP. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving on here. That's really great. Thanks everyone for participating. It's really great to see everyone that's out there. Okay, so now that I have a better idea of, where we all are, we'll go into getting into the thick of things now. So I'm going to start off with introducing you to what character is, and then we're going to look at how you can actually observe character and then assess your own character. And I'll keep relating these examples back to based on what I saw where you are all at and where you're hoping to go. And then how you can actually embed character into all of those roles that we're looking at and the specific outcomes that you'll get from focusing on character. So intro to character. We're going to go back to Mentimeter here. Think about an athlete, a coach, or any of those roles that you aspire to be in or the roles that you are in. What makes them great? So we're going to go to Mentimeter again. What makes any of those roles that you're looking at, what makes those people excel in those roles? Encouraging, resiliency, passion, vulnerability, supportive, leadership, confidence, passion. These are all good ones. Positive relationships, honest, approachable, confident, relatable. These are great. Integrity. It's like you all know that you're here for a character session because these are all, so yeah, these are great. Fun. Yep, that's a good one. Okay, I'm going to move on. These are all great. And essentially what I want you to take away from that is that pretty much, we'll get into the thick of what the framework is, but essentially 98% of those things that were listed there were all character behaviors. And again, we'll get into that framework in a second. But the issue a lot of times is that our society focuses a lot on competence development. So in sport, that's skill development. It's developing competencies. And we also focus on that commitment piece. So these are the 3 C's of leadership. This is what we need to be great at what we do. But often we don't focus enough on developing character, yet we intuitively really know how important character is to excel in whatever it is that we're doing. And a really good analogy to think about this is that leader character is really those roots that we want to develop. It's that foundational piece that helps us grow or develop our competencies in whatever it is that we do. And furthermore, it really helps stabilize us when we're in stressful situations. So if you think about the tree in difficult weather, whether it's rain, harsh winds, those limbs are kind of going to get swayed around. But if you have really strong roots, strong leader character, It's going to be your competencies are going to be less influenced by difficult situations. So we have worked with some sports teams on this. So character is really gaining a lot of traction in sport organizations. And the biggest one is that our team has worked with an NHL team where their general manager really liked this character stuff, brought it to the team, and kind of tackled it at all levels. So worked with the athletes on actually developing character, had the support team working on how they can embed and support character practices in the team, and working with the scouts on how to actually recruit and identify character in the combines. So all different levels of how you can embed character into sport organizations. Okay, so this is the character framework. This is the character framework that was developed by a team of researchers at the Ivy Business School at Western University. And there is a lot to take away from here, so I'm going to just try and simplify a few important things here. So there's 11 dimensions. Those are the 11 bubbles that you see, with 4 to 9 associated elements. And every single word that you see in this framework is a virtuous behavior. So the term virtuous means good, and it has an even more special meaning because it means that these behaviors are always good for yourself, for other people, for society, no matter what the context is that you're in. However, some of these behaviors can become bad, manifest poorly, if they're not properly supported by one another. So this framework is very connected to each other. So an example of this is if we look at an athlete with really high courage, really high drive, but doesn't really have the humility, the self-awareness, or the temperance, the patience and calm to support that high passion or that high bravery, that could manifest into really poor decision-making that could be very reckless or overtraining, leading to injury, that kind of thing. So the biggest thing to take away from this framework is one of these is not more important than the other. They all have to be strong and support one another. And importantly, we really have to focus on developing those weak behaviors so that they don't compromise the strong behaviors that we do have. And so it is a lot to take in, but we're going to kind of keep working through this as we go. And we're going to apply it to ourselves so that it can help you understand how this actually works more effectively. So when we think about being a leader, and when I talk about leader, I really mean more so the disposition to lead, which means being your best self, no matter whether you have an actual leadership role or not. So if you are an athlete on a team, how can you be a leader on your team, even if you don't have the captain title? Or if you are a captain, then how can you be the best captain? If you're a coach, if you're a recruiter, whatever it is, how can you be the best that you can be? And when we look at being the best that we can be, we think about operating 2 or 3 standard deviations above the norm. So how can we be that much better? But what actually happens is we, of course, come into all of these gravitational pulls that kind of bring down our behavior. We have these ideals of how we want to behave and what we want to do. But of course, there are all these forces that we face. And I want to go back to Mentimeter here. And I want us to think about what are some gravitational forces that you may experience as a leader in sport, or just being the best that you can be in sport, and especially as a female in sport. So if you go back to that Mentimeter, it should be able to, might say, go to slide of where the presenter is. And let's just think of some things, some gravitational forces that you might experience as a leader or wherever you're trying to excel in. Results, judgment. What are some other ones? It's good to be aware of some of these forces because it helps you prepare better to combat those forces. Results, judgment, pressure. So this is kind of going back to that tree analogy too. These are the forces that are making the tree sway more in difficult weather. Pressure to succeed, pressure, yeah. So these are good. So what we really want to do, being a female, failure, difficult parents, feeling you have to be perfect. Yeah, these are really good. Not to let others down. Funding, that's a huge one. Accessibility, expectations, not to let others down. Politics, yes. Expectations, these are great. Thanks everyone for contributing. It's really great to see all these different, this different feedback. Okay, we're gonna keep moving along here. So what we really need to, it's helpful to be aware of these forces so that we can be prepared to resist these influences on us. And there's a lot of rules that are put in place to combat these factors that we're trying to fight against. But that rules typically just bring us back to the norm. But remember, we want to operate 2 or 3 standard deviations above the norm. And that's where we need character to bring us back to that 2 or 3 standard deviations above the norm. Rules often aren't good enough for that. Okay. So to close off, kind of addressing what character actually is, I want to address a few common misconceptions about what character is to make sure we have really clear idea of what it is. So the first one is character is about being a good person and compromises performance. This is false. Strengthening character strengthens your judgment and your decision making, ultimately elevating your performance in whatever it is that you're doing. Second, character is formed early in life and can't be developed. This is false. Character is a habit of behavior, so you can develop these behaviors. That's probably the most important takeaway from this whole thing, is that you can develop these character behaviors to elevate whatever it is that you're doing. And then character is subjective and can't be managed. That is false because it can be revealed in a set of defined behaviors that can be measured. Okay, so we've actually done some of the research that I'm doing right now, which I thought would be fun to share. They're just preliminary findings, is we've sent out a survey to student athletes about what behaviors they value most to support their sport performance. And I'm curious what you think behaviors they valued most. So that's back in the Mentimeter. Let's see what you think. What behaviors do athletes value the most? All right, let's keep them coming. Let's get a good tally here, what everyone thinks. So let's just pick one here. What do you think athletes value the most? And maybe as we're waiting for these votes to come in, think about why. Why do they value these behaviors the most? Okay, we've got drive. I'm going to write these down. Drive and accountability. Drive's quite high. Okay, we're going to keep moving because we have a few of these questions. Drive and accountability. Great. Those are clear winners. Drive and accountability. Okay, what do you think the athletes valued the least? So probably by your votes, we can kind of deduce what might show up here. Humility, temperance, and keep thinking about why. Why would they value these less? Okay, transcendence. Wow, that's making a good appearance. Humility. Okay, we're gonna keep going. So humility and transcendence, temperance a close one. Now we also ask them, what behaviors do they think their coaches value the most? So their leaders. What do you think athletes thought? So when we ask the athletes, what do you think your coach values the most? What do you think those are? Drive. Okay, this is good. Accountability getting up there a little bit, but drive's still a pretty clear winner. We're gonna keep going. Last question. Which behaviors did you think the athletes thought their coaches valued the least? Temperance, justice, making its first showing, I think. Temperance up there as well. Okay. Temperance and justice. Temperance making a comeback. Okay. All right, so I'm going to show you some of the results now. These are just preliminary, no conclusive findings, but it's kind of fun to look at throughout the journey here. So in the first column here, it's on a scale of 1 to 7, 7 being extremely beneficial. So what's cool is athletes thought all of the behaviors to be beneficial because they're above that 4-point middle part. And they thought justice to be the least beneficial, courage to be the most. And for their coaches, they thought justice to be the least and and drive to be the most. Now, drive is pretty high for their own perceptions, but interesting that justice was lowest for both. And I want you to just take a second and think about, what does this really mean? If athletes and their perception of what their leaders are teaching them, if justice is low, what does that mean? And going back to the imbalances of character, low justice, high courage, high drive, what is going to manifest out of those situations? And, our focus is so much on sport. We do sport all the time, that our behaviors in sport are actually be representative of our behaviors outside of sport as well. So as a society as a whole, low justice, high courage, high drive, that could cause some serious issues. And so as leaders, I think it's really our responsibility to make sure that what we're showing is what we're teaching and what we want our athletes to value as well. And are we okay with letting our athletes not value justice as much and considering the implications of those imbalances? So I'm going to keep pushing forward here. Get you to observe character. So this is a clip. I'm actually going to stop sharing this, go to a video clip. Here we go. So this is a video clip from the movie Seabiscuit, and I really like this one because a lot of people struggle with observing character and kind of getting it in the sport world. So I want you to watch this video clip, and then I'm going to ask a few more questions in Mentimeter. I want you to think about which character behaviors may have been weak to inhibit his performance. And then there's also a clip afterwards where they address the athlete and what the leaders and supporters can do from a character standpoint.
Hey, Sahib. Kind of small, isn't he? Gonna look a lot smaller in a second, Georgie. Got $5, says he doesn't.
What the hell were you thinking?
He fouled me. What am I supposed to do? Let him get away with that?
Well, yeah, when he's 40-1.
He almost put me in the rail.
Well, did he? Look, we had a plan.
He fouled me, Tom. What am I supposed to do? He cut me off. He fouled me.
Son, what are you so mad at?
Okay. Just gonna pause this and get the other one back up. Okay. All right, so looking quickly back at this framework, we're gonna go through this pretty quick, but what character behaviors did you see were weak in the athlete's performance? Which ones were not strong? Temperance, for sure. Definitely temperance. What else? Humility, yep. Judgment. Accountability, that's a good one. I really like the accountability one, of course. Lacked accountability to his team, to the plan. Temperance, losing his cool. Ability to stay calm and collected. Humility, maybe lacking that self-awareness to know that he's been kind of ticked off by somebody else. Integrity, awesome. Okay, and then moving on, what are some of the strong behaviors that those two guys supported to help the development of the athlete? You know, like that's a pretty crucial time where the athlete comes off the field, so to speak. And what character behaviors could you observe there? Collaboration, yep. Drive, judgment. I know it's a short conversation, but there's a lot that we can observe in short conversations. Humility, yes. Collaboration for sure, being open-minded and flexible to what was going on with the athlete. Humility. And what about humanity? What about the empathy required to consider what that athlete is experiencing to help inform how they can move forward from that situation? We could talk about this for a long time, but really I wanted you to just get a sense of that it's easy to observe character behaviors when you know what you're looking for. So these words, this character framework is really helpful to help you understand how to observe character. Now, I want to get into a little bit more of what can happen with those imbalances in character. So we're going to look at our own character to try and understand that. So I want you to score yourself on a scale of 0 to 10 on each of these dimensions. There is a validated measure for character, but it's quite a lengthy test. And so if you're interested in doing that at some point, you can contact me through email and I can point you to where that is. But just for now, just to get a sense of where you think you're at, score yourself. So these are my scores that I've scored myself on each dimension. And because we're limited on time, I'm going to kind of keep going, but you can continue to do this beyond the session. So scoring yourself on 0 to 10, 10 always exhibiting this behavior when it's appropriate, 0 never exhibiting this behavior. And then I want you to identify your highest and your lowest scores. And I know I'm flying through this, so you probably haven't scored yourself on all of them. But I want you to think about when you're done doing this, maybe it's after the session, how that weak behavior may cause that strong behavior to manifest poorly. So for me, I'll give you an example. Temperance is my lowest right now. Transcendence is my highest, I would say. And sometimes what that can do is that can make me quite frustrated sometimes when I'm collaborating with other people and I see a sense of what's possible and they don't see what I see. I can get quite frustrated. And because my collaboration isn't very strong, I don't have the best strength at trying to be open-minded and working with others to help them see what I see or open to what they see. So that can really alienate people from me. So that's an example of what can happen with imbalances in your character. And so I've really been trying to focus on developing these lower character behaviors because obviously I don't want those outcomes. Okay, so I was gonna do this, Actually, let's do this really quickly. I know you haven't probably finished the whole assessment, but which character behavior would you rate your highest? What do you think? Humanity? What else is out there? Strongest behaviors: integrity, drive, transcendence, drive, accountability. What else? Drive. Yeah, and as athletes, I think drive's going to be pretty high for a lot of us. Integrity. Cool. So integrity is really high. Okay, I'm going to keep moving on for sake of time. Now, what do you think would be your lowest? What would you rate your lowest? Temperance. Yeah. Temperance, by the way, is repeatedly quite low for most people. That is the biggest pattern that we see, is that temperance is the lowest. Awesome. So what might happen now? Let's use this example. What might happen with really, really high integrity, really low temperance? What might manifest from that? And just something to think about for yourself, but some ideas. If you're in a leadership role and you're very principled and you know what the right thing is to do, and your followers or your collaborators aren't there with you, you're going to become very frustrated again. It's that temperance piece. When you become frustrated and you don't work to understand why people aren't seeing the same things as you, you can really alienate people that way. So that temperance piece really enables us to see how we can connect with others. Okay. So have a few minutes left here. So I'm just going to kind of fly through the rest of these. But now that we have a better understanding of what character is and how it might operate within us, how can we embed it into whether we're in an athlete role, leadership role, recruiting? There's different ways. So we have these three buckets: awareness, development, and embedding it into group practices. So right now what we're doing is the awareness piece, but you can also focus on developing it at the individual level and then also embedding it through practices. So when we look at developing character, it's really similar to developing a muscle. So if you want to develop a muscle, you go to the gym, you work on it 3 to 5 days a week, whatever it is, to make it stronger. When you stop making it stronger, stop exercising, it atrophies. Same thing with character behaviors. If you're not exercising them, if you're not showing those character behaviors, then you're likely not developing them, and they actually might be atrophying. And I was going to do a quick exercise here just to show you how simple it can be to develop character. But for the sake of time, I'm going to skip over this. And I'm going to just go over different types of exercises to give you at least a taste of what you can do to develop different behaviors. So one that I really like is this collaboration one. And it's just simply thinking about how many times are you in a conversation with someone else and you either dismiss an idea or you just don't know how to build on someone else's idea. That really inhibits your collaboration. So one way to develop collaboration is to choose just one conversation a day to yes and. And what that means is when you hear somebody else say something, you say yes to that idea, and then you and, so you build on that idea. That will help develop your collaboration. Or for accountability, when you wake up in the morning, identify one person or thing that you're accountable to that day, and then deliver on that accountability. Oftentimes, we don't think about all the ways of which we're accountable to. So these are just ways that you actually just figure out how you can focus on that behavior and develop it. And then from more of a leadership standpoint, if you're in a leadership role, or I saw someone wanted to be a recruiter, or whatever you have, if you have the means to actually embed certain practices, these are a bunch of different HR practices of how you can approach embedding character. So you can actually recruit and select on character, have character-based interviews. You can promote leaders with character or reward people on character, not just their performance in the sport. I had a little video here by Coach Carter, but lack of time, I want to leave a little bit of time for questions and answers. Now, just to end off the whole thing, the outcomes that you'll see is just character really is about that habit of behavior, making one better choice after another. And if you look at the outcome of a good day to a bad day, and then if you multiply this by 365, what your year could look like by focusing on those character behaviors to support better decision making, it can make a big difference. These are some expected outcomes, some very specific outcomes for athletes, coaches, teams. There's so many different outcomes. But I think the biggest thing to take away here is it's not just a mental strategy that you use to turn on in a stressful situation, but that these actually, developing character shifts your core beliefs, your values about how you see yourself, others, and the world. And often those core beliefs can be functional or dysfunctional to support your ability to operate in the world. So these are just some examples of what those core beliefs would be. And the development of character will shift those core beliefs over time to help you better support yourself in whatever it is you're going to do, especially your pathways in sport. And that's just an example of how, too quick to read over, but just how character can actually support those core beliefs. So I'll end there. Oh, and just now what? So I would suggest, you leave this session, start with yourself, print off the character framework, and focus on developing a behavior. Figure out a daily exercise for yourself, and then think about how can you use that to influence others, and think about ways that you can embed character into your team or your life or as a leader. And that's it. So a few minutes, I believe, for questions, but I don't really see any questions in the chat. Yeah. And by the way, thank you everyone for participating. That was awesome seeing all the feedback in Mentimeter, quite a cool platform. So thank you. Thank you for sharing all your thoughts.
I just say thank you so much, Corey, for sharing your experiences and knowledge with us. I truly wish we had more time today. I know we were a little short on time, but I really love how you mentioned that leadership isn't always a title, and all of us as a member of a team are equally important in terms of developing our character. So thank you so much for your insight today. And I don't know if we have any questions in the chat, but if we do, you can answer those, and then I think that's all until 2:40.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking at the questions here. Really great. The loss of platforms of sport in the world right now. I'm just looking at Isabella's question. With the loss of platforms of sport in the world right now, how can we build character? I'm not sure I entirely understand that question. Isabella, would you mind just elaborating on that one a little bit? And then Maria, do you think we have been doing enough in developing character in youth athletes? I definitely don't think we have been doing enough. I think a lot of times we assume that character or sport builds character, but it can actually value the wrong things. Like what we saw gathering the perceptions of what athletes value, really low justice. Well, we need to focus on developing that a little bit more. And sometimes we assume that character will just develop on its own or through difficult situations, but we actually need to focus on developing character in the non-stressful situations so that we can better operate in those difficult situations. Isabella, I mean the pandemic limiting our opportunities to participate in sport. Oh, how can you build character with the pandemic? It's actually, just going back to that exercise page, I think this is recorded, so you can go back to refer to that as a resource. It's actually a great opportunity to focus on developing your character on a day-to-day basis, even if you're not in your sport, so that you might be surprised when you return back to your sport and competition, you'll have greater strength of character to operate in your sport. So there are thousands of exercises that you can do on your own to develop character, even through this pandemic. And if you have more questions about that, definitely reach out to my email and I'd be more than happy to help you figure out ways that you can do that. And yeah, again, if any of you have questions, please feel free to follow up through email. My email's right here. I'd be more than happy to continue chatting. I'm just looking more here. Corey's. Okay, I think I covered most of this. All right, thanks everyone. It was really great getting to interact with you over Mentimeter.